What's up, family, and welcome back to another episode of Bible Study with the Next Pastor. And man, we've been going at this for quite a while now, so I'm super excited about that. That's a phrase that I say a lot, but it's true. I really am. I did not. I mean, like we're literally close to the end of the book of Genesis today. We're going to be picking up with chapter 33. Which means we've made it 32 chapters throughout this book. And I think we've had a lot of fun along the way. We've learned a lot of things along the way. We've discussed a lot of things. We've highlighted a lot of things. And for those of you who are new to this particular style of Bible study, I do want to remind you that this is not a theological deep dive. For most of us who are participating here, we are either non-believers, or we are fringe believers. There are quite a few fringe believers in here as well. And either way, the one thing that we all kind of have in common is that we don't take this book seriously, not in the least bit. So again, I just kind of like to give that caveat from the very onset. If you're a person who takes this book very seriously, you're probably not going to enjoy this. But if you're a person who's maybe deconstructed, deconverted, maybe you're a person who just enjoys literature, specifically ancient Middle Eastern literature, or you're a person who really just enjoys the Bible and enjoys people's different takes on it and reading it at face value as you would read any other literature, then you will likely enjoy this ride. So I definitely welcome you in. And for those of you who may not enjoy it, I still welcome you in too. But it's kind of like going swimming in a country pool. So enter at your own risk, right? All right, so before we jump in today, let's go ahead and kind of, do some of the house rules stuff. Make sure that you like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Leave your comments, interact. We're going to be interacting in the premiere and all that good stuff. But definitely afterwards, leave comments. Share this out. Get this stuff out there that helps the algorithm and all of those good things. Consider joining our community. You can join on Patreon. You can join through the YouTube membership program. You can also find us on Discord. That link is typically available in our Sunday sessions chat, which brings me to the next point that I like to hit. We're also looking for volunteers. As right now, it's really pretty much my wife and I kind of, doing all of this stuff. And we're looking for two types of volunteers. You can either volunteer on the content side, and if you want to do that, go to our website, dldd.us, and that's mainly just helping with the channel, and that can be chat moderation. That can be moderating our Patreon, helping us build community in our YouTube program. But it's very channel specific stuff. Could also be media production, creating lower thirds, graphic designs, anything on the channel side. But then we also have the community side of things. And that's pretty much what we're focused on our Sunday sessions. Well, that's us experimenting with building community without superstition and just being there for people, so our thing is kind of being progressive thinking, people-centric, and life-affirming, and finding ways to, which right now we're in the series called How to Human. So we're talking about finding ways, or this Sunday we'll be talking about finding ways to really value each other and learn how to pull value out of those relationships. One of my thesis or thesi, whatever that is, in life is that people really do need people, but it's more tangible than we often talk. So often we say, people need people. We're talking about these aspects of just emotional, love, social, and all the things. But I'm like, no, people need people from an economic aspect too. That I think one of the things that I've seen through my life and just the environment and the context that I come from is that one of the biggest issues with the specific community that I live in, like locale geographically, is that we were all a group of people in poverty who couldn't see the value in each other, and that did nothing to kind of undo the poverty, right? But I've learned that, when you do value each other, sometimes we just come to the table like, well, we need money. We need money. We need money. It's like, well, you realize that the main reason you need money is to get people. So why not just skip the money and go straight to the people, But People value people. That's literally the conversation we're going to be having this Sunday. So if you want to volunteer in helping us build community without superstition, go to either of our recent Sunday sessions videos. And I have these things in playlist for this very reason. They are all in playlist, which means I think I need to update the most recent Sunday session one. But go to the Sunday sessions playlist on my channel, click any of those recent videos, and go straight to the descriptions, and you'll find all the links you need. All right, let me see. Is there anything else in it? Oh, yeah, we have merch, man. Check out our merch. We have the Sacred Cow Grill Masters, hoodies, t-shirts, stickers. We have Keep Rising, hoodies, t-shirts, and stickers. And then we have Think Responsibly, one of my favorite, which is kind of the slogan for this channel. Think responsibly, you know. But okay, so I think I've said enough there. Let's go ahead and jump into today's Bible study. Last week we had a lot of time. A lot of time. Last week we had a really good time talking about Jacob and Esau and kind of walking through these stories. And so far, I mean, we've seen a lot, haven't we? And again, for those of you in here, because I don't know why it just happens every week, you know. I don't know. Okay, let me tell you about me, because I still got some time. Normally, I do like a 15-minute intro, and I'm only 6 minutes in, so I have time. Let me just give you a little bit of insight about me and why I'd be so weirded out by some of the people in my comments. All right, now I'll start when I was a believer. When I was a believer and I was on YouTube, I was never looking for atheist content, like ever. Well, I can't say ever. There were a few times where I was looking for Christopher Hitchens content. And just to be frankly honest, it's because I had heard how ugly some Christians were talking about this man. And I wanted to go see him, like, hey, what is he saying that evokes this type of vitriol from people? And then I listened to what he was saying, and I was like, well, it sounds kind of reasonable to me. So, you know, but then again, I've always been the black sheep. But by far and large, I did not go searching for atheist content. I didn't actually look for content that I disagreed with at all. That just seems really childish, and it seems like just a waste of time. It's a waste of your life. But I guess if you believe you have an afterlife, you have no problem wasting this one. But me, because I don't believe I have an afterlife, I have a really big problem with wasting my time. And it's funny because even when I quote unquote did believe in an afterlife, I still didn't waste my time in such pedantic ways. So, but now even as an atheist, I'm not looking for Christian content that I can go comment on there and say, "Oh, y'all are so wrong," because I'm not that childish. And when I say I'm not that childish, I'm not saying that I'm not so childish that I can't call people out. I'm saying I'm not so childish to think that I can convince somebody who has a sincerely held belief to change their belief with my YouTube comment. Like, yikes. Like, what are you, 11? Don't do that. Don't do that. Typically, here's some help. Here's some help. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. If you want to help somebody, know them first. All right. That's like the first step. Like, seriously, like when we're talking about it, advice and stuff, for the most part, a rational person is not going to take random advice from a random YouTube stranger. Like, that's just odd. And and then to get mad that somebody's not going to take your advice who don't know you, like, come on, like, you're 11. At that moment, you're 11. And so that's why, if y'all notice, I don't really engage too much with people in the comments who think like that. I'll just drop a poor fella for the algorithm. But other than that, I'm not really going to engage, because I honestly, once you've demonstrated to me that this is the level that you choose to think on, I personally feel like engaging a conversation with you is damn near child abuse. I'm not going to do that. Somebody's going to get me like, oh, you're assaulting that child like that. And I'm like, this is a grown ass man. And I'm like, but he doesn't talk like a grown man. And I'm like, you're right. You're right. This definitely sounds like he about 7. So, all right. So let's jump into Genesis chapter 33. I don't know how I got that far down that rabbit trail. Okay. Genesis chapter 33. Let's start with verse 1. Then Jacob raised his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two slave women. He put the slave women and their children in front, and Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. He put the slave women and their children in front, and Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. I just read that again to see if there was anything important there. The only thing that really stood out so far was we did talk about the fact that Esau was coming with the 400 men, and that was something that was a little troubling to Jacob. And I explained to you why, from a black person's perspective, why that would be troubling when you just send them back with one person and then 400 folk is showing up. You just expected one. This is a little unsettling. But I was actually just kind of thinking through the order here of how he has these people set up and just the wording. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two slave women. And what's funny here is, and I know these things are kind of semantic, but I still like to highlight them anyway, is as he put the slave women and their children. Now, when we read the story before, the slave women, even though they were the, what's that word? Can't think of the word. They were the carriers. That's not the word that surrogates. Yeah, even though the slave women were divinely, if you will, the surrogates, they were not considered the mother in the stories when we were reading it. Leah says, "This is my child." Rachel says, "This is my child," But now Joseph said, "No, those are their children." And so that's a little funny to me. And again, that may be semantic, but I'm not necessarily looking for any truth in this, right? I don't expect to find any truth in here. So for anybody who comes in like, "Oh, well, the true definition," I'm just going to look at you like a dumbass. Because I'm not looking for the truth here. But that is pretty interesting. So he put the slave women and their children in front, verse 3, but he himself passed on ahead of them and bowed down to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. Now, and I do find that part interesting because when we were reading chapter 32, I believe, yeah, that was last week. There is this other description that I said, I wonder, are they going to come back on that? Because it said he sent everybody ahead of himself. And I was like, well, that seems a little odd to send your whole family and then you go last. But then in chapter 33, it's kind of the opposite. He sends, even though in verse 32, it sounds like he's lining them up first. But then verse 2, but then when you get to verse 3, he passed on ahead. So, he lined them up first, and then he said, "All right, I'm going to go ahead and run up in the first." And I don't understand that. But it's probably something literary there. It's probably some Hebraic literary device. Verse 4, then Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Wow. Great turnaround point, right? So this whole time, Jacob has been, anxiously and trepidatiously, if you will, awaiting, basically his brother coming and getting revenge. Because, last thing he heard his brother said, if my memory serves me correct, is, "I'm going to get that motherfucker." You know what I'm saying? Because he stole his brother's birthright, him and his mama, who was also his brother's mama, because they're twins. They have both same parents. But for whatever reason, his mama did not like him and conspired with his brother to take his birthright. And, and they really ain't seen each other since then. And so this whole time, Jacob is thinking, man, this dude is going to kill me. And then he gets here and wow, we got this beautiful reunion. Esau runs to meet him. I still don't know why he brought the 400 men yet, but we're going to find out. He runs to meet him. He embraces him, falls on his neck, and he kisses him, and they weep. They're crying together. This is beautiful. This brother, I think, is this the only time, is this the first time in scripture where two brothers have gotten along? Is it? No. But I'm wondering. This is a reconciliatory moment. Is this the first time out of 33 chapters that we've seen some type of reconciliation? Brother, I don't want to say against brother, but brother reconciling with brother. Let's carry on. Let's see what happens next. So He raised his eyes and saw the women and the children and said, "Who are these with you?" So he said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." There you're doing that po mouth thing again. I'm your servant, you know. Then the slave women came forward. The slave women came forward with their children, and they bowed down. And Leah likewise came forward with her children, and they bowed down. And afterward, Joseph came forward with Rachel, and they bowed down. Okay, I do want to call out this situation here. Notice this: Leah comes forward with her children, but then Joseph came forward with Rachel. I need to go up a little bit. The slave women came forward with their children. Leah came forward with her children. But then Joseph came forward with Rachel. Now, if I was still a pastor, if I was still a Christian preacher, no, I didn't really preach like that. That's funny. But no, if I was still a Christian pastor, I would definitely even if I was studying, I'd be pondering the question there that in why when describing the slave women and Leah, the women come before the children and the children are not named, but in verse 7, the child comes before the mother and the child is named. It's very interesting. Which I mean, of course, now we know that, or we have this presupposition that Joseph is a fairly important character. But what we do know from reading the narrative so far is that Joseph is somewhat of this miracle child. You know, those words aren't exactly used, but that's kind of how we described it. But really, Joseph was born in a baby mama off. Is that what you call that? Like a baby mama off? Like where two baby mamas are trying to get pregnant by the same dude and trying to prove who can have the most kids by him? Is that what that is? A baby mama off? Baby mama pregnant off? I don't know. Have to think about that one. But you know, but that is very interesting that that's pointed out that way. Verse 8. And he said, "What do you mean by all this company which I have met?" And he said, "To find favor in the sight of my Lord." But Esau said, "I have plenty, my brother. Let what you have be your own." So Esau's like, "I don't want your stuff. Why did you bring all this stuff? You know, like what do you think? You know?" And Esau's confused, which at this moment makes me think Esau is slow. Esau is either really slow or he really nice. It's one or the other because he really shouldn't be that confused. I'm nice sometimes. You know, I consider myself a fairly nice person. But if a person did me like horribly wrong 20 years ago and then they show up with gifts, I'm not going to be confused as to why they're showing up with gifts. So, yes, this dude is either, okay, there's a third option. He's either really slow, he's either really nice, or he just really petty. Like it could be that option too. He could just be petty. Let's see. Jacob said, "No, please. If now I have found favor in your sight, then accept my gift from my hand, for I see your face as one sees the face of God, and you have received me favorably." That is interesting. Therefore, I've seen your face like seeing God's face. Therefore, for I see your face as one sees the face of God, and you have received me favorably. I'm trying to think who has seen the face of God up until this point, because of course we ended Genesis chapter 32 with Jacob wrestling with this theophany, but this theophany is not definitively defined as God. Some text says an angel, some text says an angel of the Lord. Some texts do say, well, I don't know if it says the Lord, but the Lord is in there, but it's like angel of the Lord. But the idea that he was wrestling with God is fairly eisegetical, or you know, pre-imposing this idea, superimposing, if you will. So I don't know. And while yes, Adam and Eve walked, or at least Adam did. I don't know how God felt about Eve, but Adam walked in the cool of the day with the Lord, but there is no mention of face-to-face interaction. And then, of course, Enoch walks with the Lord until he was no more. But again, face-to-face interaction is not necessarily mentioned. And I know you're probably like, well, why are you focusing on that? Because there are plenty of there are other scriptures that says no man can see the face of God and live. So I'm just kind of balancing that out, and that's where I was when I was a minister, when I was a pastor, when I was a preacher. Things like this did bother me. It's like, oh, okay, so where does Jacob get this language from? This lingo from? Because in Jacob's story, let me put it this way: Jacob hasn't been operating like a person who believes in God, right? Like reading this story, and you kind of see like he gets this honestly. It seems to be a family trait. Jacob seems to, based off of what we've read so far, and y'all can go back through the Bible studies, Jacob seems to like know that there is no such thing as God, at least before we get to chapter 32. Because what Jacob does, and we see him do this, the scripture walks us through him doing this. Jacob manufactures a miracle that he manufactures and then pretends not to know how it happened and says that God did it. So Jacob seems to be manipulating the fact that other people believe in gods, which then kind of makes that him wrestling with what he worships make sense. Because then when you get to chapter 32 and he actually sees this thing and he's like, wait a minute, there might be some truth to this. Maybe there's like Book of Clarence type of stuff. He's like, wait a minute, there might be some truth to this. And he's wrestling with this thing. So maybe in Genesis chapter 32 is actually when Jacob becomes a true believer. Let's see. And so verse 11, please accept my gift, which have been brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have plenty. So he urged him, and he accepted it. He said, no, man, I got plenty. I got 99 problems, and money ain't one. So please take these gifts. And Esau said, all right, now I ain't gonna stop you from giving me stuff now. All right, now I tried to be nice, but you want to give it to me. I want to take it. So then Esau said, let's journey on and go, and I will go ahead of you. But he said to him, my Lord knows that the children are frail and that the flocks and herds that are nursing are a matter of concern to me. And if they are driven hard just one day, all the flocks will die. I kind of feel like Jacob lying again, but we're going to see. Please let my Lord pass on ahead of his servants. I will proceed at my leisure, at the pace of the cattle that are ahead of me, and at the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord at Seir. Then Esau said, please let me leave with you some of the people who are with me. But he said, what need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord. He said, no. This does seem like if I was watching this in a movie, I'd kind of be like, what the fuck is going on? Like, it feels like somebody's trying to set somebody up, because Jacob is like, you know what? Y'all go ahead. I'm just going to hang out in the back. My goats, they're a little tired, and I don't want them to die from walking too much, And so then he's like, okay, cool, man. I'll leave some of my men back here to help. He's like, oh, no, I don't need that. Y'all go on ahead. So it feels like it could be suspect, but the Bible writers zig when they should have zagged a lot. So you never know. I don't want to get my hopes up. So Esau returned on his way, but Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built for himself a house and made booths for his livestock. And therefore the place is named Succoth. I don't understand, so it's just like, which I'm sure somebody's going to give me a reason, and listen, I am willing to entertain these other reasons when people say like, oh, well, I think it was this. As long as you say you think, I'm kind of fine with that. I'm okay with that. If you come at me with not, no, what this actually is, as stated earlier, I'm going to look at you like a dumbass. Well, not look at you. I'm going to look at your comment like a dumbass. And then I'm just going to respond, poor fella. Yeah. So Jacob, he does not catch up, at least from the way that it looks now. I don't want to judge the story before we get to the end of it, but it looks like Jacob just lied again. He just can't stop a Jacob from lying. You know what I'm saying? That sounds bad, doesn't it? You can't stop a Jacob from lying. Ooh, that does sound bad. I'm not going to say that anymore. Seems like that can be used in wrong ways. All right, verse 18. Now Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan. And when he came from Padan Aram and camped before the city, he bought the plot of land where he had pitched his tent from the hand of the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Then he erected an altar and called it El Elohe Israel. All right. Let's see that. God, the God of Israel. All right. Okay. That's interesting. So, okay, I have to go back up a little bit. And we're probably going to jump into another chapter because we got through this one so quick. But this one was a short chapter because it just seems to be just a reconciliation chapter. Just, hey, Jacob and his brother are good. And just as an outsider looking in, it seems like, okay, I got to check something. Let me move over here. Yoink. Jacob settles in Shechem. That's 18. That's the first time Shechem is mentioned. Yes. Okay. So what I wanted to verify, I was just trying to see, like, he goes to Succoth when he was supposed to be going with his brother. And then I'm thinking, okay, maybe Shechem is where his brother is. And that's not what happened. So no, Jacob doesn't go back to Esau, at least not yet. They were supposed to be doing something together. That didn't happen. Jacob went to Succoth and then he went down a little further to Shechem and built himself a nice little altar. This is a very weird. I don't understand this part. So, all right, let's try to squeeze in another chapter. This is I remember this one. All right, we'll squeeze in this another chapter. We're at 27 minutes in. This is good timing. Chapter 34. Let's see how this goes. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the daughters of the land. When Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he took her and lay with her and raped her. Now, out of all the times we've seen this happen in the text, this is the first time it actually uses the word. Very interesting. I guess when Abraham does it at Sarah's request, it's not that word that could possibly get me demonetized that I've already said. See, the Bible is out here getting people demonetized. That's not right. That's not right. All right. So, but he was deeply attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the girl and he spoke tenderly to her. I don't know how this would go in a Law and Order SVU episode. This just flip-flopped. Y'all remember Vampire in Brooklyn when Pops comes out, John Witherspoon, and he's like, he flip-flopped. That's what I feel like this situation just did. You open it up very ugly. Like, yeah, Shechem the prince saw her, and he took her, and he lay with her, and then he R-worded her. But he was deeply attracted to her. And he loved the girl and spoke tenderly to her. I feel like one of these things is not like the other. So, yeah, anybody trying to live by this book, this might explain why there's such a high occurrence of this particular kind of crime in the church. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, get me this young woman as a wife. Interesting. Now, I only say this is interesting because many evangelical preachers in the urban sect have taught that in the Old Testament, the act of consummation was marriage. So that anybody who laid with somebody ultimately was committing the act of marriage and was binding themselves to that person. In this case, you can see that's clearly not the case because unless this is Unless this is a situation where they've introduced verse 2 as the end of the story and introduced verse 3 as, okay, now let me tell you how we got to this point, which I don't know if that's the case. I don't think that's the case. I didn't like stories like this because I was normal, kind of healthy there. Don't like stories about the R word. But no, so he says, get me this young woman as a wife. So they're not married, which means the act of consummation, if this is happening in order, does not cause marriage, which is going to debunk a lot of urban evangelicals. Um, so verse 5. Now Jacob heard that he had defiled his daughter, so the defilement has already happened. But his sons were with his livestock in the field, so Jacob said nothing until they came in. Then Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. Now the sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard about it, and the men were grieved, and they were very angry because because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by sleeping with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing ought not to be done. Okay. This might just be me. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it. Give me a minute. Now the sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard about it, and the men were grieved, and they were very angry because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel. Israel don't exist yet. Now, I just want to throw that out there. Okay, well, let's keep on. By sleeping with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing ought not to be done. Okay. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, the soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him in marriage and intermarry with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. So you will live with us, and the land shall be open to you. Live and trade in it, and acquire property in it. Live and trade in it. Acquire property in it. Acquisition of property. Acquisition of stuff. There's not a need for more stuff, but this message is here. Okay. Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, let me find favor in your sight, and I will give whatever you tell me. Demand of me ever so much bridal payment and gift, and I will give whatever you tell me. But give me the girl in marriage. But Jacob's son answered Shechem and his father Hamor with deceit, because he had defiled their sister Dinah. They said to them, we cannot do this thing, that is, give our sister to a man who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. This was always a wondering to me, like I'm saying, like how do Jacob, how he know what other dudes' dicks look like? Like you just come across the people, like, is that a conversation? Is that a thing? Is it like, hey, I just met you. Before we even talk, I need to see your dick. I just need to see your dick. Just trust me here, because I need to know. It's just very odd, because I know a lot of people. I don't know if they're circumcised or not. It's not a conversation. So it's just odd to me. But anyway, so that's just me. That's just me. For my Jewish friends, you tell me, is this a conversation? That would be a disgrace to us. And by the way, Africans are probably more circumcised than any other group on the planet. Circumcision is a practice that dates with Africans very far back, and I'm still interested to like, how did this start? Whose idea was it? It almost feels like there was an accident with somebody, and that somebody was very important and was very, like, shamed and shallow about what happened to them. And they was like, nope, if it happens to me, now everybody has to do it. You're not normal if yours doesn't look like mine, type of thing, because it just seems very odd. Yeah. So verse 15, only on this condition will we consent to you, if you will become like us, and that every male of you will be circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you. and we will take your daughters for ourselves, and we will live with you and become one people. But if you do not listen to us to be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and go. Now their words seemed reasonable to Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. So now before we go any further, I do want to highlight that the scripture here just explicitly told us that Jacob and his sons lied. I just want to point that out. I think somebody got upset because I did name one of the videos like Jacob is the father of lies. And it was like, Jacob isn't the father of lies. Well, like, we've been in Jacob's story for like 4 chapters and he's lied in every single one of them. And the funny thing about it is the authors or the narrators or whoever's crafting this story they're not even trying to tell us that he's not a liar. It's funny. It's like they are literally going out their way to let us know that, hey, this dude is lying. And so it's funny because when you do read the Bible without the presupposition that this is some type of ancient truth, or that this is some type of spiritual revelation, or that this is somehow God's love letter to humanity. If this is a fucking love letter, no wonder God is single. Yeah. So, but when you read it without those presuppositions, it actually doesn't tell the same story we were told that it tells. So far, Abraham, Isaac, nor Jacob are any type of reputable people. They're not people you'd want to build a faith on. Nope, I wouldn't. Nowhere near it. But yeah, so I just wanted to point out that this is yet another time that Jacob is just flat out lying. And it's not just Jacob lying, but it's his whole family lying. And so, it's like in the book of Hebrews, there's what's called kind of like the Hall of Faith. It's mentioning all of these people who are like people who had a lot of faith. And Abraham is in this hall, father of faith. And then Hagar is not Hagar, sorry. Oh my goodness, what's her name? Cannot remember her name. One of you are going to remind me of her name. Damn it. What is this woman's name? She was a liar. Rahab, there we go, found her. Rahab is mentioned. I think Rahab was a harlot and a liar. Okay, she's a harlot and a liar. Now, harlots are not looked on very well in the Bible. Okay, Old Testament or New, right? They're not looked on. Paul is like the nerve of you to take your temple and put it in a harlot. This is what Paul says. I'm paraphrasing, but it's what he says. Don't put your temple in harlots, is what he says. Does he say anything about harlots in the temples, though? Okay, anyway. But the point is, he's lied. Rahab actually, according to the author of the book of Hebrews, or the epistle of Hebrews, whatever you want to call that thing, Rahab gets entered into the hall of faith, this remembrance of people who had good faith for one reason. The one thing that qualified her, because it's the one story that's told about her, to be in the hall of faith is that she lied. This is it. So now when you look at Rahab getting into the hall of faith because of a lie, and you realize that Abraham is the father of this faith, and his life is filled with lies. And now you look at Isaac and you look at Jacob, and then you notice that Joseph is not included in this, even though Joseph, his story, when you read Joseph's story, which we're close to it, Joseph's story would align more with what we typically advertise and assert as faith. Because Joseph was ostracized and villainized by his brothers. He was thrown into a pit and left for dead, and yet he continued to believe in the Lord. He got out of that pit and then got sold into slavery, and yet he continued to believe in the Lord. And then he came up a little bit, got bought into a nice little house, He got appointed to number 2 in the ranks of Potiphar's house, and then Potiphar's wife started trying to fill on him, getting us some of that good chocolate. And then he was like, "Nah, I can't do that, lady." And then they put his ass in prison. And he still believed in the Lord. I feel like preaching now. And then even while in prison, he kept interpreting the dreams of the other people in jail, even though it was aggravating the hell out of everybody except for the baker and the butler. But he gets out and is able to completely change the economy of Egypt, according to the authors. And yet Joseph doesn't make the Hall of Faith. Abraham is willing to kill his child and lies to his child to do it. He makes the Hall of Faith. So maybe God's or I don't say God, maybe the Bible compilers' definition of faith is actually a lie. Like, now I get it. Now I realize why my faith didn't work all of those years. I wasn't willing to lie. And just to bring some context to this, the majority of the people I know who look like they are successfully living by faith, which will typically only be pastors, are lying about how it worked. They're doing exactly what Jacob did. So in the background, they're working out the mechanics to manipulate outcomes. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. That's what every business does. I'm not using manipulate in the evil way. I'm saying if you see your business going this way, you're not going to hit that outcome. You're going to pivot to do whatever it takes to hit that outcome. So you're manipulating things to make things happen. And when those things do happen, you're standing up in front of the church and said, "Nobody but God. Oh my God, I don't know how this happened. Oh, y'all, if it wasn't for the Lord who was on our side, I don't know where we'd be." You're doing that. Now, you know that you and your staff spent 7 to 10 days stressing, planning, having to put pieces together, having to evaluate the moving parts, having to understand the variables, having to call people and say, "Hey, don't pay this yet. Wait till we do this." You're having to do all of that maneuvering. And instead of sharing that with the congregation and saying, "This is how you have to manage what you have." Instead of saying that, you get up on Sunday mornings and you say, I'm sorry for preaching, but you get up on Sunday mornings and you say, "God did it." You get up on Sunday mornings and you say, "Your prayers did it." And this is from someone who sat in these rooms. I'm telling you what I know. I have way too many mega pastor friends and former mentors who stress themselves out week to week to make things happen and then get up on Sundays and pretend like they don't know how it happened, which is the same thing we saw Jacob do. And they said, "Because I have to make sure the people have faith." In other words, I really have to build the people up on a lie. It's one of the things that became very disconcerting about me, very disconcerting for me about the church. It's just like, why is everybody lying? That's what I don't understand. Why is everybody lying? Like, if God is supposed to be truth, why do you feel like you have to lie or pretend to please him? That just doesn't make sense to me. If you have to make science wrong to make your God the truth, then your God is separate from the truth. I'm just saying. So Jacob lied, Abraham lied, Isaac lied, and God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And according to Hebrews, he's also the God of Rahab. And the only thing that Rahab has in common with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is that they're all a bunch of liars. Like, it's just amazing. So, I mean, literally, I think we just cracked the case. I think everybody can go home. I think we've been misinterpreting this book the whole time. That I think the phrase "fake it until you make it" may be the most appropriate description of biblical faith. All right now. All right now. Okay, so let's continue. Verse 19. The young man did not delay to do this because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. Now he was more respected than all the household of his father. So, I don't want to play the respectability politics here, though, but just the story doesn't seem right. It starts with this dude literally violating, or at least that's the way it's portrayed, right? I mean, it doesn't get very graphic, but the words that are used is he saw her, he took her, he lay with her, and oh, that sounds like a Game of Thrones scene. Okay, like I want to put the Hound here. Yes, I murdered her and I bled her. I don't remember what he said, but the mountain was saying something. This right before he killed Prince. Well, right as he was killing Prince Oberyn. It was pretty bad. But yeah, it opens up like that yeah, he took her, he lay with her, and he R-worded her. Gotta find a better word for that. And then, oh, but he loves her so much. It's just so tender. And it's just like, I'm not 100% sure. Sorry, my eye was itching a little bit. I'm not 100% sure of what the author, the writer, is trying to convey here. Which one is it? Was this an actual violation, or was this a love affair? And, as an author myself, I think shit like that needs to be clarified. Let's make this clear. I need to know who I need to be rooting for. I don't know if this is a love story or a horror story, because the way you opened it up makes it sound like a horror story, which actually I do know how the story ends, so. All right, so Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city and spoke to the people of their city, saying, "These men are friendly to us. Therefore, let them live in the land and trade in it. For behold, the land is large enough for them. We will take their daughters in marriage and give our daughters to them." These people all seem fairly honorable, except for, the big asterisk over Shechem. Now, it is possible that Shechem could be a horrible person it is possible that Shechem could be a highly respected person that is also a rapist. That is possible. I don't know if that's what the case is here, though, yet, right? So we do have to, I don't know. We gotta find out. But the people seem nice. Hamor is like, yeah, my son likes your daughter, man. And I don't know, does Hamor know what has transpired between Shechem and Dinah? But he says, only on this condition will the men consent to us to live with us to become one people, that every male among us be circumcised, just as they are circumcised. Will their lives? Okay, so wait a minute. So if people have never been circumcised before, right? So like, and that's what it seems like. These people have, because like it's like once you've been circumcised, it's not something you got to do again. It's not like baptism. All right. So once you get circumcised, it kind of sticks. But if you've never been circumcised before, right? And people come up to you and they're like, "Hey, before we proceed, y'all gotta be circumcised." How do they even know what the hell this is? You know what I'm saying? And like, is there like, okay, let me see yours first, so I know what to do? And it's like, am I watching yours while I'm cutting mine to make sure that I'm? Oh, okay, never mind. That's too much imagery. Let's continue. Boy, I hate these parts of the story. And so let's consent to them and they with us. So verse 24, all who went out of the gate of his city listened to Hamor and to his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised. All who went out to the gate of the city. All right, you ready for the story to turn? Now it came about on the third day, when they were in pain, that two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and came upon the city undetected and killed every male. All right. Okay, so remember I told you Jacob lied, but the authors told us Jacob lied. As soon as Jacob and his sons tell the lie, the author said But Jacob was lying, you know. And so he lies. And why does he lie? So they can do this. You know, they told him, man, hey, go, you got to circumcise and then we'll do this. Which again, Jacob is either a great strategist or a coward. And I think it's the coward part because remember in the last Bible study with ex-pastor, we talked about Jacob doing this thing where he was going to split his team when he thought that his brother was coming to fight him. And we think, you know, oh yeah, he's splitting his team so that way when the brother attacks one, the other team can jump in and get him, kind of like in the Battle of the Bastards. Not what Jacob was thinking. Jacob was thinking was split him up in two so that way when he attacks one, the other group can get the fuck away. You know, so it's just like, what? And so it seems like that the same type of thinking went here, where like probably when they first heard about it, you know, it's like, hey, man, they done did something to Dinah, bruh. And we need to go take them out now, homie, face to face, straight up. And Jacob was like, well, I don't know about this face to face thing, my lad. You know, and so he comes up with this other idea and he says, let's do it this way because we have that faith and faith helps us lie about shit. And I have strong faith. And so he comes up with this strong ass lie and it's strategic as fuck because it's like, we're not going to, maybe it's strategic. I don't know. I don't know why they waited 3 days. It seemed like they'd be in just as much pain or even more pain on day one. So, you know, like just right after they do it, cut everybody up. But in this case, they waited 3 days, maybe to give them kind of like a false sense of security. Oh, I'm just about to be healed up, you know, and they're probably getting their, you know, mojo and all that stuff. But then Simeon and Levi, they go out there and I mean, they kill every male. Mind you, only one person committed this alleged crime. Because right now, the only person alleging this crime is the author, and the author has not been very clear on what exactly transpired here. But only one person committed this crime, and Jacob, this man of faith, this godly man, goes out, him and has his sons to go out and kill every male. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. This story is obviously bullshit because you got two people. I don't care that you just got circumcised 3 days ago. If there's like 100 of you, y'all not about to get killed by two people. That just don't make no damn sense now. But you know, it's written. But yeah, so this is pretty bad. But this is stuff we typically read over in the Bible and gloss over. So it's like when people are like, oh no, the Bible is filled with all of these beautiful stories. I'm not sure there's as many beautiful stories in the Bible as people think. I know we have a tendency to superimpose beauty on this. You know what I'm saying? Like some people think the story of Jesus healing the woman's demon-possessed daughter is a beautiful story. They say this woman who comes to Jesus begging for her daughter to be delivered is a beautiful story. I don't find any story where a human being is having to beg. I don't find that a beautiful story. But you know, Christians find worship beautiful. And the idea of worship for many Christians, for those who worship in spirit and in truth, is the idea that when God, the one that they are in love with, the lover of their soul, for many of them, it is Daddy God, Abba God, their Father God. When he walks, when he comes in the room, when his presence actually comes in the room and they have an encounter with him, they find it absolutely necessary to lay down and not look up at him. Keep the face on the floor. I got to bow in reverence. See, I don't find that beautiful. Like if one of my homies, if I went over one of my homies' house and we're sitting down and we just talking in his living room, and then his kids and his wife comes in, and when they walk in the room, they say, "Oh, Daddy's here," and they all bow down on the floor. That's likely gonna be the end of our friendship. And I might be calling CPS after that because I'm like, what have you done to these humans? What have you done to these people? I don't know. Yeesh. But yeah, so Jacob is a liar, just like his daddy and his daddy's daddy. Jacob is a liar. And also like his mom. Jacob's mom is also a liar too. Let's not forget that. He gets it honestly. And so and then now they've also murdered a whole bunch of innocent people. Like I think this could have been somewhat, I don't want to say justified, but justified literarily, I guess, if they just would have killed Shechem, you know. But maybe they just, maybe in their mind, because, and I promise you this is how somebody will rationalize this, well, if they just would have killed Shechem, then it would have caused a war, and then more people would have died. So at this moment, you just have to kill all of the men, so that way the women and children can live and never have to deal with the burden of a war. You know, that foolishness like that. So they killed Hamor and his son and Shechem with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. So Dinah was at Shechem's house. When did this happen? How long has she been there? See, there's so much in this story that they're leaving out. Like, I need to know more. Um, Jacob's son came upon those killed and looted the city. Jacob's sons came upon those killed and looted the city because they had defiled their sister. That sentence doesn't actually read right to me, but it is what it is. They took their flocks, their herds, their donkeys, and that which was in the city and that which was in the field. And they captured and looted all their wealth and all their little ones and their wives, even everything that was in the house. I don't know why, but when I was reading that, there's a song that one of my coworkers plays on our Friday night get togethers, and it's just like, fuck you and your dog and your sister and you're done and you're broke ass something and you're something, something, something. But it's like, fuck you. A, B, C, D, E, F, U. I love it. But that's, I don't know why that's what that reminded me of randomly. Cause it's just like they captured everything. They captured and looted all their wealth with their little ones and their wives and everything that was in the houses. Okay. So this is murder. This is kidnapping because they were children. And then what do you call it for? It's not adult napping. There actually is a word for stealing adults. And I forgot what it is, but it's a very, like when you hear the word, you're like, oh yeah, that's right. Damn. But I can't remember it right now, so maybe it's not as intuitive as I want to believe it is. Um, but they captured, looted all their wealth and all their little ones. It's just a weird way to say that, and their wives and everything that was in their houses. So they're robbing. This is a robbery at this moment. It almost feels like they used this Dinah situation as a way to get what they really wanted. It was almost like maybe, and it's just me doing my little author thing here, that maybe Dinah came home and said, "Oh, Father, I just met a wonderful young man." And then what's his name? Shechem. And the father said, "You know what? Yeah, they got some nice stuff down there. Did you sleep with him?" "Well, Dad, I can't tell you about that. I don't kiss and tell." "No, go ahead and tell me. Did you sleep with him?" "Yeah, good, good. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. All right, you go on." And then the father go out and tell the brothers, "Hey, Shechem raped your sister. What y'all gonna do about it?" You know what I'm saying? And get them all riled up. It seems like that there might be some stuff in there because she was at his house. They don't tell us what this happens. It's that he took her. I guess that's when she got to his house, when he took her. But, I was thinking that he might let her go at some point. Otherwise, how does anybody know about this alleged situation? So there's a lot of things not here, and it seems like the author may have tried to kind of get us riled up and justified with Jacob's and his children's behavior. But here's the thing: even if the story happened the way the author presented it, it still doesn't justify Jacob's and his children's behavior here. They have literally killed people who had nothing to do with the incident and have stolen all of these people's things and have kidnapped and basically just taken all the women and children. This is terrorism. This is tyranny. Like, what? And yet, these are the people that are in God's hall of faith. The God of Isaac, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And it reminds me of the show Heroes, where Hiro Nakamura always called the dude Mr. Isaac. Mr. Isaac. Oh, Isaac. He was a horrible character. Isaac Mendez. There he was. Okay. I'm coming back because we got to wrap this up. Oh, we're doing good. All right. So, verse 30. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have brought trouble on me by making me repulsive among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And since my men are few in number, they will band together against me and attack me, and I will be destroyed, I and my whole household. But they said, should he treat our sister like a prostitute? What the fuck is going on in this story? Okay. Jacob is like, nah, I didn't know nothing was going on. Which is possible. It's possible that what I read earlier could have said, but they were being deceptive. Jacob may not have known. But Jacob's son answered Shechem and his father Hamor with deceit. They said to him, only. But Jacob is there the whole time, so I don't understand. I don't understand. Whole bunch of liars here. Whole bunch of liars. Let me see what the next chapter looks like. We will likely pick up next week. Yep, Jacob moves to Bethel. For all you Bethelites out there. Oh, I forgot the name of Bill Johnson. Yeah. Bill Johnson, Chris Valentin, those are the right names. Which Chris, to his credit, after he prophesied that Trump would win, he did apologize and said he wouldn't do shit like that anymore. So hopefully he sticks to it. I have found that Christians aren't really good about sticking to their words, though, because they can typically just ask for forgiveness. All right. But yeah, so we will likely hit chapter 35 next week because it is sort of a long one. And Isaac is going to die in that one. That dude ain't dead yet. We ain't talked about him in a minute. But yeah, this was great. So I hope you all enjoyed this story. I don't know if I even have any final wrap-ups from this one because this one was just all over the place. And you can kind of tell that these two chapters are really just trying to tie in some loose ends as we get to Joseph's story. Again, like one of my theses about the story of Genesis is that the whole purpose of the story of Genesis is to basically kind of highlight how this people group gets from the beginning to Joseph. And again, that's kind of the purpose of the first 5 books of the Old Testament, is to kind of give a rationale of how these people get into this predicament. Now, this is just the more historical, sociological side of it. This is not me being picky or having fun, but this is the actual aspect is, I don't know why my eye is stinging. But the actual aspect of these stories, especially the first 5, are people trying to create a rational justification for where they are in life. And in many ways, trying to, and when I say rational justification, it's not just how we got here. It's also trying to give them an identity, a shared identity, in the same way that Americans kind of talk about the forefathers. They're not actually our forefathers. I don't know these folk. I don't think they're in my family line. Could be, but I don't think so. But that's a part of our narrative, our rational justification for calling ourselves Americans, right? And so what you have to understand about the stories that are in this book is that they are crafted by a people whose identity has ultimately been disbanded. And in many cases, a unified identity may not have existed prior to. All right. Okay. Let me help you out here a little bit. You're slow, but you're worth waiting on. So I started by using kind of the metaphor of Americans. Let me transition to an analogy of Africans. Many of the Africans who are in this country today, right, are here because of the dismemberment, if you will, of the cultures that they had before, well, that we had before. Okay? The cultures that existed before are now by far and large lost to the Africans who are now Americans. Okay. And many of those cultures may or may not have been interrelated. And so many of the people who were equivalently impacted by the shared experience of the transatlantic slave trade and American colonialism and American slavery, they may not have had anything in common before other than the fact that they came from the same general vicinity. But by being on the other side of this shared experience together, and you can see this in my community, there becomes a social need in many cases to craft a shared identity that's ultimately rooted in the shared experience, but in order to feel justified, has to predate the experience. So in this case, in the Bible, the experience is basically the scattering of the tribes of Israel. And actually, let's move from tribes so we can try to get somewhat historical, which, by the way, when you're dealing with Israel as historical, ancient Israel, it's not as cut and dry as we like to think it is. It's like much has been with the Abrahamic faiths. A lot of things have been greatly exaggerated. And for those of us who are actually interested in the truth of history, that's very unfortunate, you know. But ultimately, what we do know is that there were these people groups who were from the kind of these Canaanitic lands who ultimately got subjugated by Greeks and Assyrians. And on the other side of this, once they managed to get a little bit of sense of freedom, which are kind of the stories that are told throughout the book of Esther, Nehemiah, and Ezra. Yeah, and more particularly Ezra and Nehemiah. Those two books kind of give you a really good light of what's going on in the Old Testament. I almost encourage people to read those books first, because it really does give you a really good picture of what's going on, or at least the sociological rationale of why people are writing these stories. And so that event is a people being completely subjugated and oppressed by another people group, and I can't even say a people, because the truth of the matter is, prior to them being all captured and scattered by the same principalities, if you will, there may not have been a shared identity. These could have very likely been completely separate Canaanite groups that all came under the same oppressive regime, just like many of the African groups that all came under Portuguese or Spanish or French or Dutch oppression. Many of those groups had no interrelativity. They had no shared identity. The only thing they shared was an oppressor. My God, I'm preaching. But anyway, but then after the event of oppression, when you are corralled together and you begin to realize that our only way forward is going to be together, you feel the need to develop that shared identity, again, based off of that shared experience. And so in this case, these group of crafters, which literally that's the work you see being done in the book of Ezra and the book of Nehemiah, these group of crafters begin trying to craft a story that could take a people who were not a people and make them one people. That's literally the message of the Bible. That's literally the promise that God gives to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is that I will take a people who are not a people, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. And that's where these stories kind of exist when you set them in their proper sociological context. And so the crafters then say, well, it wasn't this moment that or they create a moment that's bigger than the most recent moment. And in this case, the moment that was bigger was what? Egypt, the Exodus. And we now know that that's a complete fabrication, which is not odd when you look at American history. There are many things that people hold to be absolutely true about the founding of this country that are absolute fabrications. Fabrications is somewhat a part of our nature, which is why skepticism should always be our default posture. That was a great way to close that out, right? Okay, that wasn't even planned. But I am through. I hope you have found something of value in this. I hope this has been somewhat therapeutic for you. I hope it's been somewhat educational for you. I hope it's been borderline spiritual for you. You know what I mean? I really do have a good time in these conversations, and I cannot wait to interact with you in the chat. But that is all I have for now. So make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, consider joining our community, volunteering, check out the merch, all of those good things. And yeah, I think that's it. Am I missing anything? And I'm actually just talking so I can get my mouse over to the right button. But until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and stay beautiful if you can. I'll holler at you, y'all.